Hi, Brian. This is Kirsten. I'm
Hey,
going to start. I'm going to put us in start webinar mode so that any attendees can join the meeting.
great, thanks. Kirsten, do you want to promote Jesse, or do you want me to do it?
I was promoting him just as you were speaking.
We're of the same mind.
I see that there's somebody also in attendees named Peter C. Do you know?
I think that's probably Peter Christian from the news media, so that's okay.
I'll leave him as an attendee.
Thank you very much for promoting me.
Hi, Jesse.
How's it going, Brian?
Day by day.
I hear
How
you.
about
Man.
you?
Well, I am taking next week off to hang out for spring break with my family, so
Fantastic.
about that.
That's great. Are you guys staying in town, or are you heading out?
No, we are staying right here. Just getting caught up on life.
Yep.
So.
Oh, do I know?
I've got a kitchen remodel that's about to happen, but it's predicated on me doing my part before the contractors get in and do some stuff. So I have to kind of work on some of that over the week.
I hear you. Hello, Emily. I just saw that you joined. Can you hear me okay?
Sorry, I'm just putting headphones in. Were you talking to me? This is Emily.
I was just saying hello.
Okay, hi.
Wanted to make sure you could hear me. And if I'm understanding correctly, once we get going, I'll turn it over to you. Is that correct?
Yeah, yep. I'm going to do the introduction and then I'll
Great.
turn it over to Jesse. Yeah,
Great. Perfect. Thanks.
awesome. Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Brian.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I just
It is the sound of infinity.
Yes, it was. I am ready to go when you are. As soon as we start the meeting, though, I'm going to have to take down the share screen so that I can take attendance. And then I can pop it back up.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. As soon as it clicks over to 3:15, I'll call us to order then. Oh, and Kirsten, I see Montana. She probably should be promoted.
It's looking like I can't start my video because the host has stopped it. Just FYI.
Thanks, Sandra. We'll figure that out. It's the worst possible outcome for everybody. My video is on and everybody else's is off.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative. Certainly that would be up to the local school.
I think you did hear it, Kirsten. I just want to confirm you heard the thing about the video issue.
I did, but currently I'm a co-host and I don't see how to turn it on.
Where we're waiting for a slot to open up at a certain university.
Looks like it's all you, Brian.
Well, I'm enlisted as a co-host also and can't. No.
All right, let me see what I can do over here. Did that start the video for everyone?
I can see you now, Kirsten. How about, can other folks try theirs?
Not
Nah,
me.
still won't let us.
Yeah,
No.
still no.
No, not yet.
Ah, I found it.
There we go.
There we are.
I was feeling very lonely.
Ah,
Okay. Kirsten, we ready to go again?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. I will call to order Committee of the Whole for today, Wednesday, March 10th. I'm also seeing that my internet connection is unstable, and if I get dropped, please let Gwen pinch hit for me. We have our first item is roll, and maybe my connection will improve during that. Would you mind calling the roll, Kirsten?
Sure. Anderson,
Present.
Becerra,
Present.
Contos,
here.
Hart.
Here.
Hess. Hess is out today. Jones,
Here.
Merritt,
Present.
Ramos,
He's
Ramos.
absent today.
Cheryl,
Present.
Vasika,
Present.
Brian von Lossberg is here, and West.
Here.
Great, thanks. And I went out of order a little bit. Kirsten, would you be able to put up the participation slide? Great, thanks. So obviously we continue to meet virtually. The slide up is where folks can find the agendas for our meetings and related documents. And this next slide shows the multiple ways folks can provide public comment and reach council. If you're participating in a Zoom meeting, you can raise or lower your hand as a participant. There's a way to do the same thing by clicking more on a phone, iPhone or Android. And if you're using a landline, you can use *9 to raise or lower your hand. And as always, there's the City Council voicemail, as well as the City Council email to reach all council members. Thanks. We have minutes to approve from February 24th. Are there any changes to minutes? Seeing none, those will stand approved. And is there any public comment this afternoon on non-agenda items? We have one agenda item, but if anyone in the attendees has public comment on non-agenda topics, can take that now. Not seeing any, we will go to our one item of committee business, which is an emergency winter shelter informational update. We have a few folks with us, including Emily, who's going to kick us off. And without any further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Armstrong.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. I am Emily Armstrong. I'm the Reaching Home Manager with the city, she, her pronouns. And I am here mostly just to introduce Jesse. We have some updates. Our emergency winter shelter is, we're in March. And so just wanted to provide some updates to the council on what the status is and where we're going. So I'll turn it over to Jesse to give more details.
Great, thanks. Welcome, Jesse.
Thanks for having me, everybody. My name is Jesse Jaeger. I'm the Director of Development and Advocacy for the Poverello Center, he, him pronouns. And Amy asked me to join you today. First, just want to say we're just so thankful with the partnership with both the city and the county in making the emergency winter shelter facility happen this winter. A big shout out to Emily, Montana, Kara, and that whole crew over there. We couldn't have done it without their smart thinking as we've kind of worked through this. So thanks to that whole crew as we've been moving forward. Just a couple, I know we've got big news to share, well, biggish news, but just a couple updates on where things are at right now with winter shelter. We've served a little over 450 unique individuals since November 1st when the winter shelter opened. We've been averaging about 120 people a night. What happened is it started off kind of slow, but after we got that big cold spell a few weeks ago, a lot of people came in and have kind of stayed in. There has been some successes. I mean, there's been challenges and stuff like that, but there has been some successes. I was just talking to our homeless outreach team, and they were very successful in getting people to come into shelter that were sleeping in the Reserve Street camps and out in some of the other encampments. The last report that we've only had about 4 or 5 people maybe staying down in the Reserve Street camps. A lot of those people came into shelter, which is good. The reason that's good is it gives the HOT team a lot more access to support those individuals, work with them on housing goals, get them the resources that they need, those types of things. We've managed to get 5 individuals housed so far. We're working with another 5 with vouchers and trying to get them into housing. A big piece of that is, of course, the Cornerstone Permanent Supportive Housing Project that's just opened up this winter is a real asset in that endeavor. So, things are going pretty well. It's always an adventure at Johnson Street, just like it is at the Poverello Center. But the staff is doing really well, and guests are doing as well as they can, kind of in their own hard times. As you know, we had funding to run the emergency winter shelter through the end of March. And that funding was largely through a CDBG CARES Act related grant to allow us to do that, plus some additional funds that the city and the county offered up. We knew, though, that April is still very much can be a challenging month, particularly at night. It can still get dangerously cold in April here in Montana. And in a conversation with our friends over at the Human Resource Council through the winter, they were able to secure us funding to be able to extend that shelter for overnight purposes only through April. So this is advantageous for a couple of reasons. One, again, it can be still dangerously cold in April, and this is going to allow us the opportunity to keep people inside when it gets dangerously cold. So that's good. Just to back up a spot, we'll basically run from about 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. It'll operate very much like normal winter shelter did outside of COVID times when we were operating the winter shelter, extended winter shelter at the Salvation Army last year. The other advantages to this is it's going to allow our HOT team more time to work with individuals. They're currently setting up shop at the shelter and kind of having conversations with people about what's next, what's their housing options, what's their future shelter options, those types of things. It's going to give a longer off ramp for that. So that staff, we're going to have more time with our folks there to get them more safely out back into the community and the best options we can work through them with. So that's good. It's going to give us more time to help get people vaccinated. We actually just had our first vaccine clinic at Johnson Street there today. We had 36 clients vaccinated at that clinic. And so that's a big success. We're going to be working with Partnership Health Clinic to try to get more folks vaccinated as we move through this time. And that's just going to give us more ability for doing that types of stuff. And I also think it's going to lessen the impact in the community, particularly the immediate neighborhood. I think that, a hard deadline of just all of a sudden you're housed and you're not housed, that's 120 people that are going to be back out on the streets. It's going to provide a little bit more of a softer off ramp into getting people back out into the community, getting people the resources that they need, and those types of things. So we are really appreciative of the Human Resource Council for the funding opportunity for this. It's coming through emergency services grant funds that they manage there, and I'm just thankful for just the general partnership with everybody in terms of moving us forward. We do still have some needs. I mean, one of the things that's happened is that folks that have come in from being unsheltered, they've not necessarily been able to hold on to all of their survival gear and that kind of stuff. So we are asking for donations of tents, sleeping bags. That kind of stuff is really critically important. Warm jackets, socks, gloves, hygiene kits, all those things are really important to get donations for right now. So that's basically the overall update. Emily, did I miss anything? Is there anything that you were hoping I would say that I did not?
No, I think you did a great job covering it. And I would just add, a huge thanks to the POV and all of the members there that are working so hard and have been working so hard throughout all of the winter to make this possible, make it such a success. It's, with all of the barriers that were put in place, I think the effort has just been tremendous. And I'm very proud to say that it's been a good year and we've been able to make things happen that hadn't happened before. And I just really appreciate everything you all are doing. So just offer my kudos and my thanks. Yeah.
Thanks, Jesse and Emily. I will take questions, comments from council members. I see folks queuing up.
I couldn't quite hear you, but I heard the burr. Was that Amber?
Sorry if my connection is bad. Yeah, Amber, yes.
I only heard the second syllable of my name. Thanks so much for coming for the update and the work that you're doing. First, I'm just curious, do you know between, hopefully you'll know the answer to this, but between the POV and the Johnson Street shelter, how are our numbers looking in comparison to last year? You said you had kind of an average of, was it 120 a night?
That's where we've been about, is about 120 a night there at the main shelter. I'm sorry, not the main shelter, at Johnson Street. And we've been pretty at the max, which is at 88 at the main shelter there. So that's around 200 or so. Last winter was interesting. This is a little higher, I think, than what we were seeing last winter. If you'll remember, last winter was fairly mild much of the winter. We didn't have a big hard cold snap. So several people, less people actually came in, I think, at the last winter. The other thing that was happening last year, which is actually a very good thing, I think, is that other communities were standing up emergency winter shelters. So Hamilton, Kalispell, Bozeman, places like that were standing up emergency winter shelters, and we were less the only people in town, right? What happens to some folks, particularly in rural communities, if they don't have if they become homeless in the winter, we're it. Before last year. This year, not all of those were able to come back open. So I think that's part of the reason some of those numbers might have climbed a little bit. And of course, COVID, I think, is a big part of that as well. So I'd say numbers are in terms of who we're serving, are a little bit higher. Of course, I think the point in time count will also, when we get that data, will also help to see kind of what was going on. But this winter was a little harder. Last winter was pretty mild. So I think that was probably the biggest part.
Thanks. Julie.
Thanks. I'm in support of this effort, and I'm really glad that we were able to come up with the funding from the Human Resource Council. It has literally taken a village to make the winter shelter happen, and I'm glad that we're going to be able to get more people vaccinated. It is slightly unfortunate that, almost as soon as the words were out of my mouth with a constituent that the shelter was going to be closed on March 31st, the news broke that you were going to stay open for another month. So I know, that it also has been difficult for some of the neighbors, and Jesse and you and I have talked through that with a couple of constituents in the area. So, whatever outreach we can continue to make with the folks who have already been engaged, I hope that we can help them through this. I know it's been a little tough, but you guys are doing great work, and I thank you for it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Julie. Of course, we're going to continue doing our neighborhood meetings. The next one's actually this Friday. Always inviting people. I think our most recent person with some concerns, I emailed and invited him today to join that meeting. We've had actually a lot of tremendous support from the neighborhood as well. There's this crew of Franklin to the Fort neighbors that have been solid in terms of attending our neighborhood meetings, have been helping rally community support, getting us donations and stuff. And they've been fantastic. And we really have appreciated their support. One of the things that I actually learned that was interesting when I was out delivering holiday thank you gifts to our board, I learned that more than half of our board actually lives in that neighborhood. We're embedded there in terms of just people that are in our world. And I actually don't live that far away from the shelter. My commute got real short, so I've been appreciating that. yes, definitely community effort. We're doing the best we can. We understand. We know that we're not going to be the best neighbors always. And so we just try the best to ameliorate the things that we can fix. And then there's some big systems issues that you all know that we need to work on together to really take care of those core issues that are facing our community around housing and wages and those types of things.
Thanks. Continuing through the queue, Stacy.
Thanks so much. Appreciate the presentation and understand that, there's definitely going to be some neighbors who are not going to be happy with this, but I think that the keys here is what Jesse said, that this just gives us a longer off ramp. I mean, no one, when we stood this up, had a crystal ball date of like, hey, COVID's totally going to be under control, X date, we can plan accordingly. And I think the important thing is also, and Jesse can talk to this, about the numbers at the main Poverello Center building are still, their census is low. And so because they need to continue to put the measures in place to be distant. And so, as spring comes and less people are needing the winter shelter, then they're able to kind of go to the POV and all that sort of settles out. Well, they were under a different circumstance this year. Mm-hmm. And so just having that couple more weeks really kind of gives these folks a safe place to be. It gives more time for the social workers to work with them to kind of figure out what their next steps are. And really importantly, gives an opportunity to get these folks vaccinated, which is hugely important for all of us. The more people in our community who are vaccinated, the better we all are, the better our numbers will be, the closer we will get to herd immunity, and the closer we will get to the other side of this. So, appreciate you bringing this to us as an informational item so that we can communicate, get the word out, but just, it's just a slightly longer transition period because we're still in the middle of a pandemic, still winter in Montana. To that, I will now ask a question of Jesse in terms of how are you guys making the transition in terms of numbers as you look at the Poverello, this closing down and the Poverello being the only place for people to go?
Yeah, so we're going to continue to be tracking what CDC recommendations are for congregate shelters like that in terms of social distancing. That's a big thing we're thinking about, frankly, in terms of what we're going to do next year, is, making sure we're planning for all the options really in terms of what could happen next year. We don't anticipate a change in CDC recommendations for a while. And so we just want the community to be prepared that we're going to be at that kind of 88 level for a bit now. It's big success today. We got 36 folks vaccinated. That's awesome. We do expect that we are going to have some vaccine resistance within for getting the vaccine within the populations we serve. I think the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is going to make that easier, just one shot. So we're not going to have to worry about like bringing people back in and things like that. So that's going to certainly make things a little bit easier on that front. Partnership Clinic has been a huge partner throughout this whole pandemic, and they're going to continue to be so. So we're going to work hard to get those vaccines out there in our client base, and then we're going to follow CDC recommendations in terms of best practice there to try to keep everybody healthy and safe in the main shelter. So, we got to be real. I think you're going to see a lot more people out in the streets through April and then after we close at the end of April. That's just the truth. We're working hard. The homeless outreach team is staffed up to 7 individuals right now. They're usually only 2. That's also because of a CDC grant, or not CDC, community development block grant that will run out at the end of June. You're going to see us talking a lot about the HOT team this spring. I'm sure if you follow our social media, you're seeing us talk a lot about them. And we're going to be asking the community to help us raise some money so that we can keep that HOT team fully staffed for the next couple of years as we go through the economic consequences of COVID. And so that's just pay attention to that. That's going to be a big deal moving forward. But I mean, just to go back to your question, Stacy, it's going to be, I think we're not going to know for a little bit in terms of what we're going to be able to do social distancing wise in the main building.
Okay, so a few people here. Gwen?
Thanks. I'm really supportive of this and really happy that Human Resource Council was able to locate the funds to extend this out for another month. And the phrase that always comes to mind for me is, there but for the grace of God go I. And so I'm really glad that this community is supportive, and you guys are able to do such a great job with this. My question was, it sounds like for the month of April, the plan is to staff it during the night, but during the day, it will not be a landing pad, so to speak, for people. So how are you going to approach that, and in terms of the neighborhood and impacts and any advice for the neighborhood? Because it sounds like this will be a bit of a different dynamic.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a different dynamic. I mean, we'll have staff around the building. I think the hot team will continue to be kind of in that area, working with people, encouraging people to be in other places. There's some office space there that some of us admin people have been using just to be more present to help direct care staff. And I think we're anticipating to stay there for a little bit, again, to provide some of that kind of like presence in the neighborhood and around the building and stuff like that when it's not fully being operated during the day. Hot team is going to be working with people again, through this whole period about what's your plan, where can we get you? There's funds available to get bus tickets if they've got a better support network someplace else. Helping them with kind of rent and get some of those assets together, stuff like that, encouraging them to find other places to be. But we got to be clear, it's going to be a challenge. I don't want to oversell that all of a sudden people are just going to disappear out and and no one's going to see folks experiencing homelessness. It's likely that there's going to be some more encampments that are going to spring up. People are going to see more homeless people out in the community because they're not going to have that 24-hour space to be in the building. And we just have to be, I think, clear and honest about that.
Thanks, Jesse. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Sandra.
Thanks. I have a question and a comment. First of all, Jesse and Emily, I wanted to thank you for everything that you do for our vulnerable population. It's hard work, and I really appreciate all the help that you've been putting in for them. Brian, I am curious, when we originally voted on this, it was to go to the end of March. How come we're not voting on it to extend it to the end of April?
That's a good question. The funding source, I think my response would be the funding source is another agency that is providing that, and we're extending that time frame. Okay. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the concerns that many neighbors and business owners have had. There have been property crimes. There's been defecation on property. There's been public drug and alcohol use. And I know that a lot of these are from the minor, from a lot of this is a small population of who uses this shelter. And it's unfortunate that the actions of the few does impact the many. But I am really concerned about that. And I did promise my constituents that this would end at the end of March. They have been very open with us. They've been very understanding that this shelter is needed, but they did see the end of March as a light at the end of the tunnel. So it is unfortunate that we no longer can give them the end of March as the light at the end of the tunnel. So I am really concerned about that. I probably would have voted differently if I knew it would be extended without any vote. So that's just naivety on my end. I did make a promise to the many folks that reached out to me about their concerns. So that's why I'm bringing that up. I do wanted to thank you guys for all of the work that you're doing, but like I said, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up those concerns.
Yeah, and I hear that.
Sure. Emily, is there anything, I was kind of commenting off the cuff there, but if you or Jesse would like to comment.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jesse.
You go ahead, Emily.
So I'll talk at once. I don't have too much additional information to add. The original vote that I was part of was on the CDBG COVID funds. And so that was, as Brian mentioned, a different funding source that funded the majority of the winter shelter up until the end of March. So yeah, different funding sources, but I absolutely recognize all of the challenges that come with the shelter being where it is and this neighborhood having to come to terms with that, having the POB as a neighbor and the implications of that. I think the POB, hot team, all of us in the homelessness sector of Missoula work very hard to try to mitigate those as much as we can and work with neighbors and alleviate all of those concerns. But I do recognize they're a very legitimate part of the process and something we have to constantly work to try to make better.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And
Go ahead, Jesse.
yeah, and Sandra, I totally hear your concerns. We try our best to be as good a neighbors as we can, but you know, substance abuse, mental health issues, those are common elements for the people that we serve, and so we are doing our best to work with them and get them into better situations, and some of those longer term solutions are what's going to really solve those issues. So we're going to try to work with our neighbors around these issues and do the best we can. And we have to, I think, also continue working on things like making sure we have better substance abuse treatment facilities, better mental health services, and frankly, a lot more housing. That's really the critical thing, is we need a lot more housing.
Yep. Mirta.
Thank you. A couple of comments and then a question. First of all, I just continue to be impressed and proud of our community for coming together and meeting the needs and the challenges of the community. I also want to say that while we might not get a lot of snow in April, the nights continue to be cold, and I am incredibly thankful that we can extend this. I know that it's not what the neighborhoods might have expected or hoped for, but I am sure that for those people who receive this service, it is something that they hope for, that they could have a place where they could go at night in April when it still is pretty cold. So I am fully supportive of this and incredibly thankful that we have members of the community that are thinking, about those who really need this assistance. Jesse, can you remind me how many hot teams we have and whether we still have one that works in the west side and one in the Johnson facility?
Right. So it's one hot team with many members. So we've got normally it's a 2-person team. That's been the history of that team, and that goes back several years. I don't have the exact date of when it was founded in the top of my head, but we were able to secure a grant, part of the funding through CDBG COVID response, to expand them up. And right now it's 7 individuals, and they kind of work together to cover different parts of the community, and they have different kind of tasks that they work on as a team. So they are still out on the west side and at Johnson Street. They just kind of go between the 2 places and are active in both places. It is our hope that we're going to be able to raise enough funds this spring to keep them at least fully staffed for the next 3 years. We predict that the economic consequences of COVID are going to last for a while, particularly with people that are on the margins in terms of housing and those types of things. I just looked at a report that said that there's something like 23,000 to 31,000 people in Montana alone that are at risk for evictions once eviction moratoriums lift from the CDC. I mean, that's a terrifying number. And so we want to keep that team together and working on these issues longer term, and they're going to be really important. So so that's kind of our big thing that we're thinking about right now is what's next after vaccinations happen. What's next going to happen in the economy?
Great. And just a quick follow-up, if I may.
Very quick. We're out of time, and I've got more people, but go ahead.
I just want to make sure that people know where to provide donations. Do they contact you at the Johnson facility or at the main Poverello Center?
So if they go to the poverellocenter.org/current need, all the information people need for doing donations is there. Or you can send an email to donations@thepoverellocenter.org, and we can work it out from there.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks. Important point, Mirza. Thank you. Heather, you'll be the last one.
Very briefly, Jesse, please thank all of your staff as well as the board members. It comes as no surprise to learn that the vast majority of your board members are in the Franklin to the Fort neighborhood. And to you ward representatives of Ward 6 and Ward 2, your neighborhoods have bared the burden of homelessness. And thank you very much, and all of your constituents, for stepping up and helping those who need help.
Here. Thank you.
So I and I again apologize if my feed is bad. I want to thank Jesse and Emily, and I want to specifically acknowledge, the concerns that Sandra brought up and Julie. Ward 1, Ward 2, we've had longer experience with this over here. I understand there. I particularly want to recognize, Julie, what the situation you were in, having just talked to a constituent, and then this change. And I recognize the departure in what the plan was. I also recognize the incredible value that Jesse described and Emily described that comes with this change. And sometimes those are the situations we have to deal with, and they are imperfect, but we look for the greater good and the opportunity for the greater good. So, but I do want to acknowledge that for both the ward reps as well as the community members. With that, I will quickly see if there's any public comment on the item.
Brian, this is Kirsten. I wanted to mention that somebody from the public did issue a comment and attach it to the agenda if anybody wants to read that after the meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kirsten. I'm not seeing any raised hands in that. Again, thank you, Jesse, and thank you, Emily. And that was our item today. We will be adjourned.
Thank you.